Welcome to Analysis, the second part of Reading for Understanding, Analysis and Evaluation. What's the difference between analysis and understanding? Well, analysis is about how something's being said rather than what's being said. And we're going to look at three things today: imagery, metaphors and similes, word choice, connotations of a word chosen, and sentence structure. And although I've given a list of sentence structure things here, in fact, we're only really going to look at lists. So, the article we're going to be looking at is by the writer Philip Pullman. Homelessness is a national disgrace. Let's make Britain humane again. And the very first paragraph starts with an image, with a metaphor. The plight of homeless people and our reaction to it are part of the hideous tangle this country has got into. There are so many strands leading into this appalling knot, so if we pull any one of them, the tangle gets worse. So, just as trying to untie a tangled knot can result in making it worse, so trying to solve issues in society can result in creating even bigger problems. And what we're interested in here is not what he's saying, but the fact that he's picked a metaphor to use it. And why is this a particularly good metaphor? Because anytime anybody's tried to untangle something, then you realise you're as likely to make things better as worse if you just keep pulling it and trying to undo it. And next, we're going to look at the next section, which is all about how angry he is at the failure of government. And again, we're not asking what's he angry about, but how do the words he uses show us that he's angry and disgusted that government are performing so poorly. So the question of why decent men and women find themselves able to walk past people begging in the street or huddled up in doorways with only layers of cardboard to keep out the cold is all mixed up with the flagrant deficiencies of Britain's democracy and the craven desire to suck up to the US that brought us to war and drugs, among other idiocies, and the extraordinary grip that the public schools seem to have on the levers of power. Now, when he says public schools here, he means English independent private schools, which were called public schools because they prepared you for public life, not because anybody was able to go to them. So how does he get across his disgust for the government? Flagrant deficiencies. It suggests not only that there are shortcomings in government, they are blindingly obvious shortcomings. Craven suggests cowardly, no backbone, no self-respect. Idiocies suggest not just stupidity, but absolute stupidity. So, do all these get across just how angry he is and disgusted he is with the government? Yes, they do. So we don't need to write that in. This shows that he's disgusted with the general failures of government. The question gave you that. All you need to do is analyse the connotations. And finally, we're going to look at lists to emphasise the range and number of problems. And then there are the facts that the ice caps are melting and our utilities are now in the hands of foreign corporations, and that teachers are treated with hostility and suspicion, and that Russia interferes with our politics, and that libraries are closing, and the transport system is an uncoordinated mess, and people are dying in hot trolleys and hospital corridors, and that senior politicians see fit to deny that the government has anything to do with people being poor, and claim that the victims of Grenfell Tower died because they had no common sense. Now, what he's saying here is that there's a whole lot of problems in politics or that in society that are due to the failure of politicians. But what we're asking is, how does he get that across? And the answer is he uses a list to emphasise the range and number of problems that we have in our society that can be attributed to failure in government. I'd also just like to draw your attention to that at the end, he starts a number of very short sentences with and universal credit, and the gig economy, and zero-hour contracts, and the flagrantly biased media, and Brexit. So that should show you that this is a professional writer. You're allowed to use and to start a sentence. You're allowed to write very short sentences. And it can be incredibly powerful because it is unusual, and it helps to emphasise just how much of a failure these are in this particular case. It draws attention to them and allows you to reflect on them individually, thinking about what failure they are. Why do we tolerate it? Finishing with a question. And really, this is a rhetorical question because it's telling you, one, that we do tolerate it, And secondly, suggesting to you that you shouldn't. Also notice the use of we. He's not just blaming you for not caring about homeless people. He's explaining that because of the way the world works, we all accept homelessness, and he's arguing that actually we shouldn't. So, in the quiz, I'd like you to read a bit more of the article, and the questions are going to be focused around imagery, word choice, and lists about how things are being said rather than what is being said.